Because they don't have the physiology. Yeah. Huh? How could God do something like that?
Or whatever. What I should have just said is talking that states what in the changes of allele frequencies under naturalism
Hello,
prevents
J.
a
Dove.
donkey from evolving vocal cords and being able to speak to humans in human speech.
But Matt is so funny.
Specific particular donkey.
Well, let's just say,
hold on. Will not evolve vocal cords, right? You understand that, right?
yeah, I'm saying donkeys in general. So we can have a whole group of talking donkeys that are speaking, coming in here. Imagine this, so that we have.
I'm imagining a talking donkey right now.
We discover a talking donkey somewhere in the Amazon forest. No, a talking.
Seeing me go live ruins your day.
And
I'm in
Let me ask you this, right? Like,
they say all the
a Discord with a bunch of atheists right now. They have me all muted.
what do you mean by talking?
They never even let me talk at all.
They have some sort of ability where.
Yeah, my friend Matt's in here.
We can interpret and understand what they're saying.
Like, so yeah, so speak a human language.
Before we go on, these specific examples of
That's funny. They're talking about the donkey talking in the Bible.
had vocal cords, which gave them the ability to speak.
Like, if God can create the universe, is having a donkey talk, is that somehow now like, well, okay, I'll grant you that God created the universe, but then when he makes the donkey talk, that's going too far. That's, how could he do that? I say, like, well, look, man, if God can make an atheist talk, God can make a donkey talk. There's basically the same thing at that point. Yeah, I can't believe in a miracle in the Bible, but I can believe in the scientific multiverse.
Yeah, I think I accept evolution now.
How could God walk on water?
Where did he go? Did he get muted and run?
Yes.
Got muted and ran. You guys can debate me. Unmute me.
If Matt's gonna be here, though, I want to hear the dumb shit that he says. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. Just saying.
I think everybody wants to hear the dumb shit the masses. It's kind of funny.
No, that's not true.
Why don't you guys hear the dumb shit I say?
Sometimes it's funnier than others.
They want to unmute me.
Relic Twister.
Hello, that is my name.
Or is it relic twister?
Whichever one tickles your fancy.
Relic twister?
I've licked it before, I'll lick it again.
That's what some people say.
Who are you?
I'm a
Sully, stop fucking with my eyes.
Who are you? Some strange person from Ireland decided to jump in here. Why is it some
Irish guy, great.
Oh,
That's a
atheists.
pretty racist emote, Sully.
Oh man, see when they're not oh my god, the atheist prattle is the worst. Like when they're not debating a theist, then they start talking about like Star Trek and stuff or Big Bang Theory. Have you seen the latest episode of Big Bang Theory? I don't believe in God. That Sheldon, he's sure a character. Okay, so I guess I was reading the paper by R.T. Mullins. Didn't get very far. He was talking about, for the purpose of the paper, we're assuming God is ultimate ground of being, and we're assuming presentism. Presentism is the idea where all there is the present and time flows. So the past and the future don't exist. It seems weird, though, to say the past doesn't exist, because if the past doesn't exist, then like what when we claim things about the past, doesn't there need to be like a referent for that? I don't know. Timey-wimey. All Christian theists affirm that God is an eternal being. However, as T.J. Mawson points out, divine eternality can be understood as a timeless or temporal eternality. Divine eternality can be understood as timeless or temporal eternality. Oh, I see what he's saying. To say that God is eternal is to say that God exists without beginning and without end. This follows from the necessary existence of God. A being that necessarily exists does not begin to exist nor cease to exist. However, traditional theists have wanted to say more than that. God is more eternal. Oh, wait. Traditional theists have wanted to say more than that God is merely eternal. Traditional theists have maintained that God is timeless. God is timeless if and only if God necessarily exists without beginning, without end, without succession, without temporal location, and without temporal extension. Historically, Christian theists have affirmed presentism. When traditional theists claimed that God is timeless, a presentism, again, all that exists is the present. So when they claim God's timeless, they often describe God as existing as a whole in an eternal now or a timeless present. This timeless present is said to lack a before and after. And then there's a footnote for that. Oh, he cites his own book. I explore the textual evidence of thinkers like Augustine, Boethius, Anselm, Aquinas, Scotus, and many more. Many contemporary thinkers have misunderstood Boethius, claiming that he held to an eternalist ontology of time and that God, in some sense, is perceiving what happens in time. Yet the textual evidence that I explore makes it clear that Boethius does not say this. Instead, following Augustine, Boethius says that God's knowledge is in no way depends upon time. Instead, God's knowledge depends only on having a perfect grasp of his essence, and thus God knows all true propositions. Further, Boethius explicitly uses a presentist ontology of time to compare and contrast with God's eternal present. Yeah, I heard some guy arguing on a live yesterday that God can't be timeless because... he was arguing that God can't be changeless because thinking involves change. But here we see, Boethius says that God's knowledge in no way depends upon time. Instead, God's knowledge depends only on having a perfect grasp of his essence, and thus God knows all true propositions. Since God's the standard of truth, if God's fully self-aware, then he knows all truth. There is no evidence for the supernatural, including your God. Stop lying to others and yourself. Well, that's funny you say that because I provide evidence for the supernatural on a daily basis. Bro, you can barely read. True. You know what? That's why I debate atheists, because I'm a fool. And so, since, it doesn't, you don't have to be able to read. You don't have to be, you don't have to know very much at all. To win a debate against an atheist is, super easy. So that's why I only debate atheists or agnostics, because yeah, I can barely read and I'm not very smart, but you don't have to be smart to, because their position is untenable.
Morning.
Good morning. So, do you accept God as your creator?
I do.
You do? Oh, okay. Are you a Christian?
I am.
What would you like to say?
I was trying to ask you, do you feel like Christians that are deconstructing aren't Christian?
The deconstruction Christians or the people on TikTok that say all these false things about the Bible and slavery, and they say God doesn't exist. Yeah, so they're not Christian.
Well, I mean, there is slavery in the Bible, depending on what version you're reading.
The original King James version of the Bible doesn't use the word slave.
Yeah, but King James isn't the original version.
Yeah, but there was no slavery in ancient Israel. They're just making that up. That's not true.
There was no slavery in ancient Israel. There was slavery all around the world.
There's no slavery in ancient Israel, so those people are making stuff up that they're adding to the text what's not there. In the original King James version, they didn't use the word slave at all. It was only added in like around the 1900.
Okay, well, stepping aside from slavery, what else do you feel like they're saying that isn't true?
Just like anytime they talk about the Bible, because they don't like they have a bias against the Bible, so they frame everything in the most like negative way. Like you can make anything sound bad depending on how you frame it.
Well, I mean, like, deconstructing isn't a bad thing. You can still believe in God, accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior,
Okay,
and not have
is it a
belief in the
bad
Bible.
is it a bad thing to sit on here and lie, misrepresent Christianity, and say Christianity is that a bad thing?
Wait, say that again?
Is it a bad thing to sit on TikTok on your live, misrepresent the Christian view, the Christian Bible, misrepresent it, spread false information, and then say that like Jesus isn't real? Isn't that bad?
Are they all saying Jesus isn't real?
Yeah.
Because I deconstruct, but I still accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior.
Okay. Well, you're not who I'm talking about then. I don't know what are you talking about deconstruct?
Deconstructing means that we're going into the Bible, looking at its lessons, seeing what was appropriate for that time period when the Bible was originally written and scribed because it's a conglomeration of stories, and comparing it to now and what is appropriate, what is supposed to be used in society today.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you have a problem with me saying deconstruction Christians are deceiving you?
Yeah, because I feel like people can deconstruct the Bible in a positive way.
Yeah, but what's the reality of TikTok? The reality of TikTok is we have deconstruction Christians who are BSing people and deceiving people, right? And so that is what I'm addressing. So why don't you stop being a crybaby and get the hell off my panel?
I'm not crying about anything,
Okay.
and that's not very Christian of you.
Yeah.
You want to be upset, that's fine. Anybody challenging your worldview, that's fine.
Yeah, I think what you're doing here is sanctimonious, self-righteous, and pathetic, and I'm embarrassed that we're both Christians because you make Christians look like cowards.
I make Christians look like cowards because they're not you.
Hmm?
Because I don't have the same viewpoint as you. You don't accept me as a Christian.
No, just because I think you're a jerk. Okay,
What?
so you
Well, it
have
says to not judge thy neighbor. Only
okay,
God can judge.
but you're coming up here to give me crap because I'm saying deconstruction Christians are deceiving you, which
I'm
is
asking you questions, and you're getting upset. You're calling me a jerk. You're
Because
saying I'm not a good Christian.
you're being unreasonable. That's
I'm
why.
being very reasonable because I'm not yelling at you. I'm talking to you.
Yeah, and I told you when I'm talking about deconstruction Christians, I'm talking about the liars on TikTok that are deconstruction Christians. So what's the issue?
Are they lying about stuff?
Okay,
What
thank
are
you.
they lying about?
They're lying about
You're saying about slavery and stuff. No,
yeah.
there's historical evidence for that.
Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. I actually did research on this stuff.
Okay, can you give me one source?
Yeah, Peter J. Williams. He wrote a paper on this that I read, right? And it's full of sources. So
So your source is another source that
you
has
guys,
sources that
so
isn't
here,
actually a valid
you,
source.
Joe. Okay, well, you are never come back. You are a disgrace to God. Okay.
I'm a disgrace to God, even though I'm a
Yes.
Christian.
Yes. Never come back. So let's see here. So here, in the mid 19th century, there was an outpouring of publications concerning biblical texts relevant to slavery by abolitionists and anti-abolitionists, right? And so the sources we have Josiah Priest, Bible Defense of Slavery and Origin, Fortunes and History of the Black Race. There's Charles Eliot, The Bible and Slavery, in which the Abrahamic and Mosaic discipline is considered in connection with the most ancient forms of slavery. The Pauline Code of Slavery is related to Roman slavery and the discipline of the apostolic churches, Cincinnati, Ohio, Swarmstead. So I just got tons of books here from people in the mid 19th century. The abolish, and so when we look at these sources, do you and these Christians are defending slavery, they don't mention any of the verses that the deconstruction Christians cite or point to. They talk about the curse of Ham. Let's see here. Here we go. Amid all this heated and sometimes sophisticated debate, even those who opposed abolition were well aware that there might have been a significant distance between someone designated in the Hebrew by the term Eved. So the word the word that they're pointing to in Hebrew that they're that is slave is this word Eved, and they're slave is not like a real good translation of the word. Servant is a better translation of the word because the word when we use the word slave has a negative connotation, right? But the word eved in Hebrew did not have a negative connotation, and you would have to add other words context to give the word a negative connotation. So when they interpret these passages and just they're adding this negative connotation that did not exist in the Hebrew. And this is a mistake, I think, on the translators in the 20th century. But prior to the 20th century, the the people who were the Christians who were defending slavery did not use those passages because the KJV, they didn't have these other translations at that time. They had the KJV that didn't have the word slave in it. Okay, so here we have the debate between abolitionists, anti-abolitionists, right? Um, um, so there was so the Christians who were supporting slavery back then knew there was a difference between the Hebrew word for servant and the word and what we were doing to slave. Like they knew that word. How do I describe this? So like in Leviticus and stuff where they cite that it talks about slaves, The people defending antebellum slavery, the Christians, did not use those passages because they knew that was not the same thing as antebellum slavery. They specifically did not. So isn't that curious that the people defending slavery didn't go to any of these passages that the deconstruction Christians on TikTok go to today that they use to support slavery in the Bible? The actual slaveholding Christians did not do that. What they did. So here, this what's surprising for us now reading these publications, and I cited the publications from like 1850s that they were using to debate and use the Bible to defend slavery. They never brought up the passages in like Leviticus that the deconstructions bring up. Okay, so when we read these, it was about they would argue about this belief in the inferiority of the Hamitic or African people. That was their argument, and so they said they used biblical texts in terms of like the curse of Ham. So their whole argument, the Christians, was that there was this curse of Ham, and that I guess black African people had the curse of Ham, and because they had this curse, that they were therefore inferior race, and they used that to justify slavery. They never went to these passages in Leviticus that are talking about servants. Let's see here. The early exegetical developments giving rise to this view are traced meticulously in D.M. Goldenberg, The Curse of Ham, Race and Slavery in Early Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Princeton University Press, 2003. So there's your source. So some have historically misinterpreted the Bible, Curse of Ham, from Genesis to promote racist ideas. So like in the past, where science, like they would, there was a thing in science where they would, based on the shape of someone's skull or something, they use that to like justify racism in science. So there's scientific, people were just racist in this time period, right? So the science was racist, and that in turn there was racist Christians, and so they use this idea of the curse of Ham to promote racist ideas. It's like a debunked, just like eugenics is debunked now. So this is a debunked like idea that Christians had, and it's totally like debunked. In the actual text, Noah curses Canaan, one of Ham's sons, and not Ham himself, or a specific race. Modern scholarship and theologians widely reject this interpretation as unfounded and recognize it as a misuse of scripture for prejudiced purposes. The passage has no inherent connection to race or skin color. So race was central to, so we cited this guy, Josiah Priest. He wrote the Bible, Defense of Slavery and Origin, Fortunes and History of the Black Race. And it's from Glasgow, 1852. So race was central to his argument in that book. He was in that. And then there was the lecture by Philip Schaff, one of the most scholarly opponents of political abolition. But Schaff, famed for his productivity, including editing with others the 38 volumes of the anti-Nicene, Nicene, and post-Nicene fathers, he opposed many aspects of American slavery, but he held that it was wrong to intervene politically to abolish slavery. So again, he does not cite these passages that the deconstruction Christians cite. However, even for him, an argument from race was central, and he thought this actually made American slavery superior to Roman. So they thought that he argued that the American slavery was better than the Roman let's see here. It says justice as well as due regard for our national honor and the influence of Christianity requires us to also place the Roman system of slavery far below the American. Although the latter, no doubt, borrowed many obnoxious and revolting statutes from the Roman slave code, Roman slavery extended over the whole empire and embraced more than one half of its subjects. American slavery is confined to the southern states and to 1/8 of our population. The former made no distinction between race and color. The latter is based on the inferiority of the African race. Rome legalized and protected the foreign slave trade. The United States since prohibited it as piracy. That's Schaff from Slavery in the Bible, page 18. So they didn't notice he's not going to these passages, the deconstruction Christian site. They're just racist people that are arguing race stuff. They're just, and we know now that that's goofy to think people are inferior because of that. You know, no one thinks this is true now. So this is just they're misrepresenting reality when they do this, when they cite these passages in the Bible. This is not how they argued for biblical slavery. They argued this curse of Ham, racist, like debunked stuff. And we see the same thing with Darwin. Charles Darwin argues this stuff. He has a book about how there's inferior races and like the European race is like gonna eventually like outbreed all the other races or something like that. So this is just the way people thought 200 years ago. Like, it's unfortunate because it's like really ignorant, but that's what I mean. This is reality. I mean, that's just the way the world was. I mean, what are you gonna do? Now we think different, and in 100 years from now, people will think different, and they might look at us today and say we're the wrong ones. So as time goes by, people change, people think differently. It's just the way life is, and they're just. I don't think I guess this is really like, I think translating the word servant to slave was just a mistake. So, but that's why you have to do more research. You can't just like read the book and decide for yourself what it means. You have to like look into these things. So it's like what Christians do today with like evolution's a popular idea. So people try to reinterpret Genesis to fit like the Big Bang and evolution and say, oh, a day is actually like a billion years or something. This is what the racist Christians would do with the Bible. They would try to reinterpret the Bible to fit their scientific racism, because scientific racism was a thing back then, whether we like it or not today, right? It was true. And so like Christians try to make the Bible fit science today. The racist people tried to make the Bible fit the scientific racism back in the day. So that's a lie. I feel that's like wrong. How can you deconstruct atheism when it isn't a structured belief system? Easy. I deconstruct atheism by like I show how it's like irrational, and it's so I just question beliefs about the non-God world. I identify and I address biases, privileges, and flaws in the non-God model. And then I help them find, the truth that atheism is like impossible. Okay, so anyways, we're talking about time. Okay. What were we talking about again? We're talking about... Yeah, I'll just summarize this. If God is real, he's evil. God can't be evil because God's the authority of what is good or evil. Atheism isn't a belief in evolution. True. Atheism isn't a belief in evolution, but the vast majority of atheists believe in evolution. There might be one that doesn't. I've never met them, but it's true. Precept, I was just listening to you on YouTube. You really need to actually read Hume. I've read a book on Hume, dude. What am I getting wrong about Hume? How is it irrational to disbelieve one more God over the thousands that you also don't believe in? Well, because there's no there's no... Atheism is a universal negative, and it's like, good luck proving that. You can't. Thanks for the likes. You can't prove atheism. So that since there's no rationale for atheism, it's just going to follow that atheism isn't irrational or like it's an emotional position. It's not like someone's like, oh, there's evidence made me think atheism is true, or oh wow, this really great argument made me think atheism is true. It's usually like an emotional reaction to church hurt or something. They got church hurted, and then they go, well, I don't want it to be true because it hurt my feelings. And the Bible also says that we naturally, the natural man will reject God and turn from God and love the world instead of loving God. So that is a factor. The burden of proof falls to you, dude. You're the one making a wild claim. Well, am I the one making a wild claim because the vast majority of the people on earth believe in God? So I think I'm like, I'm making an ordinary claim. And to say atheism is true is extraordinary because there's not a lot of atheists. But I'm also willing, I accept that burden of proof, and I will objectively prove Christianity. But that doesn't mean everyone, in a debate, everyone has to give a reason for their position. You can't just have a position and then not give a reason for it. So a lot of these people, they know that they can't defend atheism. So what they do is they want to shift the burden to the Christian. It's called a burden shifting fallacy. And so they'll define atheism as a lack of belief, and in their mind, if I define atheism as a lack of belief, that somehow exonerates me from having to defend my position, but that's not true. You're just going to have to defend, like, what's the rationale for having a lack of belief in atheism? So, or a lack of belief in God. My reason, there's no tangible proof that supports the existence of your God. Well, see, the problem with that is a fallacy, because there could be no evidence for God, yet it doesn't follow that there is no God. So that's not like a good reason to deny God. Like 100 years ago, there was no evidence for DNA, yet DNA exists. So there could be no evidence for something, yet it exists. Doesn't follow that there's no evidence, therefore it does not exist. You'd have to be able to show that there's like an expectation of evidence. Like, I could argue there's an expectation of evidence for like Bigfoot, like there would be carcasses or something. And due to a lack of evidence we would expect, we can be justified to say that Bigfoot doesn't exist. But that doesn't exist for God. The Bible is a rewrite of a rewrite of a rewrite. It's not really an issue because, like, in Judaism, they would rewrite things. So, Jewish culture is subversive. They would borrow from other cultures, and then reinterpret their stories under the context of Yahweh. And so Christians just do the same thing. So we have the mind of Christ. So we took from Judaism, and then we reinterpreted the Old Testament because we have new revelation. It's just progressive revelation. So that, I mean, there's no issue. Is it okay to be agnostic? Well, you can't actually be agnostic. It's impossible to be agnostic. Yeah, I like how they believe in a multiverse. I can't believe in any miracles in the Bible. How could a miracle happen? But then they believe in a multiverse. It's like, get real, dude. Jesus couldn't walk on water, but there can be a multiverse. That makes sense. I blame Marvel. You know, people watch these movies and then they think it's real. A pantheist is an atheist because you deny the creator-creature distinction. The Bible is plagiarism anyways. The story of Genesis was stolen from Mesopotamia. Yeah, but like, so what? It doesn't. Yeah, I know that. I can even. Do I have it in my book here? It talks about that. Yeah, here I can read about that. Can you guys see this? See this book? Oh, it's a book. Can't. Oh, there we go. See, that's a book, y'all. I'm holding a book in my hands. Let me read from my book. Let me read from my book, y'all. Okay. We know. He's talking about the biblical text is subversive, that they steal from other cultures, right? So we know how far both the Old Testament and the New are impregnated by cultures round about. We can find traces of Egyptian texts, Job, and many other books, and Assyrian, Chaldean texts throughout the Hebrew Bible. Even in Ecclesiastes, there's a thinking of an incontestably Greek and Egyptian origin. Everyone knows, too, that Paul draws much inspiration from Stoicism in his moral advice. But can we be sure that these cultural texts express God's revelation? Or might it be that revelation does not belong exclusively to the Jews? Are there not manifestations of it among other people? In my view, the crucial point in the borrowings is the way in which the texts are treated. Never are Babylonian or Iranian or Egyptian or Greek texts inserted just as they are in their own identity. They are used, and they are always used polemically, that is to show that the point of the text in question is irrelevant and false. Throughout the Bible, as regards surrounding cultures, there is what situationalists call reorientation. One of the forms of revolutionary actions that they have proposed is that of taking a text and giving its objective sense a new turn so as to make it say something else. This is exactly what the Jewish and Christian writers did. They took a text and applied it to a different situation. They changed certain terms and put the text in a context that altered its original sense. Thus, the Egyptian poem that is inserted into Job is radically changed because it is related to the God of Israel. Again, The stories in Genesis, as is recognized today, are constructed in a polemic against Babylonian cosmogonies. Stoic morality ceases to have its alleged meaning and universal reach when it is set in the movement and death and resurrection of justification and sanctification. Even though the phrases remain the same, the meaning is radically broken. This happens in many different ways. Humor is one of the ways employed by the Hebrews. They take a word and by changing a letter give it a totally new sense. They modify the application of a quotation, as Paul with the Cretan proverb. They play on words in such a manner as to ridicule the text or person or to achieve a very different effect. Some examples are very familiar, such as calling the bull of Canaanite worship a calf, making Baal into Beelzebub, the god of the flies, etc. Thus, the Hebrews are set in the midst of cultures. They do not shut themselves off from them. They know and use them, but they make them say other things. This is the subversion of culture. An interesting project that has never been undertaken would be that of measuring the distance between an original text and the same text as it is inserted in the Bible, or of analyzing the process of reorientation that is used. It would serve as a model for what we should do with our own culture. Interesting. So yeah, I'm fully aware that the Bible borrowed from other cultures and they subverted the text to give them new meaning and context and the God of Israel. So don't care. Doesn't prove it's false. Big fail. Big fail. This is all they got. Oh, you guys got the Hebrews took texts from other cultures, therefore false. Nope. Sorry, fail. Atheism is the necessary precondition for intelligibility. We have that, therefore atheism is true. Yeah. No, it's not. Atheism separates the mind and the objects of knowledge in your starting point. So you'd have to explain how do you connect your concepts to reality when you separate them in your system? Oh, do I believe in talking snakes and donkeys? Of course. Like, there's a lot of like, I mean, like, if God can make an atheist talk, he could make a snake talk. Like, I don't see much of a difference, you know? Stop reading books. What you reading for? Mm-mm. No, God can't deceive us because that would be self-defeating. And I don't know, like, why do people talk about certainty? What does certainty have to do with anything? The transcendental argument for God isn't about certainty. It's about the necessary preconditions of intelligibility. Preconditions for intelligibility, not certainty. It's about having like metaphysical content to the when you talk, there needs to be metaphysical content to the things you say. We can't have metaphysics. We can't reason or sense data our way. We can't science or philosophy our way to metaphysics. We can only know metaphysics through the Bible, through Revelation. Because God's the only one that knows metaphysics. We humans can't know metaphysics. So to deny God's revelation cuts you off metaphysically. It metaphysically destroys you. Because now you have no metaphysics. So now all your words are empty. They have no context. There's no reality to speak of. Why am I nerfing you? What are you talking about? You do not know that and are not the authority. You know, you guys are welcome to come up here and prove me wrong, but good luck. Good luck, man. I wouldn't want to have to debate as an atheist. Like that's I wouldn't even like what would I even say? Like all their arguments are so bad. Like what is God did a bad thing and then a baby got cancer. Therefore no God. There's an animal suffering somewhere right now. Why would God let an animal suffer? We love animals. Imagine having to argue that. God. So we're talking about R.T. Mullins' paper, The Divine Time Maker. And let's see here. We're unpacking two different interpretations of what eternal means: timeless eternality or temporal eternality. Eternality. Key points for a layman. Okay, so 1. Eternal means always existing. To say God is eternal means God has no beginning and no end. God has always existed and will always exist, aka he's necessary. 2. Timeless versus temporal eternity. Timeless eternity. So God exists out of time. This means God experiences no succession of moments. No before or after exists in an eternal now. Or temporal eternity, where God exists forever but within time, experiencing events as they happen. The traditional view, most Christian theologians like Augustine and Aquinas believed in a timeless eternality. They described God existing in a timeless present, where God is not bound by the flow of time, but encompasses it all at once. 4. Necessary existence. Christians believe God exists necessarily, meaning God cannot fail to exist. This necessity implies that God has no starting point or ending point, reinforcing the idea of being eternal. And 5. Presentism and eternity. Many traditional Christian thinkers held to presentism. So presentism is the idea that only the present, no past, no future. This view that only the present is real, they reconciled this with God's timeless nature by imagining God's eternal now as something entirely distinct from our experience of time. So imagine you're reading a book, you experience the story page by page, moment by moment. God, as traditionally understood in timeless terms, is like someone who sees the entire book, past, present, and future at once. Meanwhile, in temporal eternality, God would be more like someone reading alongside you, moving through the story as you do, but never reaching an end. Both ideas emphasize God's unending nature, but differ in how God relates to time. Okay, so this can be contrasted with more contemporary theists who claim that God is temporal. Divine temporalists affirm that God is an eternal being. God exists without beginning, without end. Yet divine temporalists affirm that God has succession in his life, as well as temporal location. However, there is debate among divine temporalists about how to best understand this claim. Some temporalists affirm that God necessarily has succession in his life. Other temporalists say that God only has succession in his life after his act of creation. Most temporalists affirm presentism, though not all do. Of the divine temporalists who affirm presentism, they will typically say that God exists in the same present moment as we do. This is because on presentism, whatever exists at the present. The present moment exhausts all of reality. When God creates things, God is making things exist at the present. This raises the question, what is a creation? In order to answer this question, I must make a distinction between worlds and universes. and a distinction between world actualization and creation. As I understand it, a possible world is a maximally consistent proposition that is best captured by modal logic. Such propositions express the entire way things could be. A maximally consistent proposition will contain an ontological inventory of all things that exist within a world, and the relations that obtain between those objects. This maximal proposition will also include the entire history of a world's timeline, if that particular world contains a timeline. The actual world is a maximally consistent proposition that expresses the entire way things are. Worlds are distinct from universes. A universe is a smaller domain within a world. A universe is a collection of contingently existent beings who are spatio-temporally related to another. This is why one finds theists talking about a possible world where God exists without any universe of any sort, or of a possible world which God exists with a universe. As I shall discuss below, theists of different stripes disagree over whether or not God can exist without a universe. Possible world. Worlds are distinct from universes. A universe is a smaller domain within a world. A universe is a collection of contingently existent beings who are spatio-temporally related to one another. Oh, okay. A universe. Interesting. Because a universe is spatio-temporal. Okay. A world isn't necessarily spatio-temporal. Okay. Without distinction, there would be no meaning. I think that's true. We need the law of identity. Okay, so wait, where were we? With this distinction between worlds and universes in hand, consider the difference between world actualization and creation. Creation occurs when God freely causes some contingent thing to exist. For my purposes, I shall primarily focus on creation as God causing a universe to exist, though it is logically possible that God create a single contingent being instead of an entire universe. According to Klaus J. Cray, world actualization is different from creation. World actualization need not involve any causal activity on God's part because the mere existence of God entails world actualization. To say this in other terms, the mere existence of God entails that there is an entire way that things are. That is, God exists with a particular nature. One second. Allow me to clarify a point before moving forward. That there is a world of some sort is necessary because God necessarily exists. A world actualization simply follows from the way things are. That there is a world of some sort is necessary because God necessarily exists. Okay, so a world would have to exist for God to exist. And if God's necessary, then a world's necessary. So then world actualization simply follows from the way things are. However, this does not entail that a universe necessarily exists because the existence of a universe depends upon the voluntary exercise of God's power. A creation occurs when God voluntarily exercises his power to cause a universe to exist. I wish to make one final remark about moments of time before moving forward, as one shall see in due course. There are different answers to the question, what is time? Each answer seems to assume some kind of relationship between time and moments of time. These relationships will be explored later, but for now it must be stated what a moment of time is. According to Fioco, a moment is the way things are, but could be subsequently otherwise. Moments of time have built within them the potential to be related to other moments in earlier than and later than relations. However, it seems like more needs to be said to get clear on what a moment is. Some philosophers say that we should take moments of time to be analogous to modality instead of analogous to space. In light of this, moments are sometimes taken to be sets of nearly maximal propositions, or proposition-like entities, so there are even smaller domains within worlds than universes. Moments are merely a slice of a world or segments of a world, yet this point needs to be clarified in order to properly distinguish between moments from worlds. What is the difference between worlds and moments? What is the difference between maximal and nearly maximal sets of propositions? The difference is over the scope of these propositions and over the ordering relations between these sets of propositions. I'm getting totally lost in the sauce. There are several ways to develop this distinction, but I shall briefly note two ways related to tenseless and tensed logic. On both views, the scope of worlds is much larger than the scope of moments. The difference between the views is over which is best temporal logic to which is the best temporal logic to use to capture temporal claims. On the first view, worlds are maximal propositions best captured by modal logic, and moments are nearly maximal propositions best captured by tenseless logic. On the second view, worlds are maximal propositions best captured by modal logic, and moments are nearly maximal propositions best captured by tensed logic. I don't know what tensed logic is. Is that like the opposite of modal logic or something like that? Single-ended logic, a type of logic that uses set voltage level in relation to ground to interpret what? Voltage? Is it Boolean? Single-ended Is it Boolean logic? Stupid philosophy. Yeah, I'll ask ChatGPT. Maybe that'll help me. So let's see here. Summarize and whoa! Explain this to a layman. This passage is about understanding what a moment of time is and how philosophers approach its definition. Let me simplify it for you. Okay, so what is a moment of time? A moment is like a snapshot of how things are at a specific time, but it also includes the potential for change. Things could be different later. Moments are connected to other moments by earlier and later relationships, like how seconds in a timeline relate to one another. Moments versus worlds. A world is a larger, complete reality that includes all moments, possibilities. Think of it as the whole movie. So a moment is just a slice or fragment of that world, like a single frame of the movie. The distinction lies in scope, how much they include, and how they are related to one another. Okay, so a moment is like a slice of frame in a world. And a world is like the whole movie. Or like a single frame to a movie. A moment's a single frame to the movie, and the world is the whole movie. Okay. So philosophical views on moments. Some philosophers think of moments as being more like modalities, possibilities, and potentialities rather than spaces. They describe moments as collections of propositions or truths about that particular moment in time. Four different ways to understand moments. So there's tenseless logic. Moments are just points on a timeline without past, present, or future. This is like looking at all moments in a timeline at once. Tensed logic. Moments are experienced in terms of past, present, future, focusing on how we experience time unfolding. So tensed logic is when the flow of time, and tenseless logic is looking at the big picture, I guess, the whole timeline. Okay. The spotlight versus the big picture. The whole book is like a world. It contains all the pages of a complete story. A single page is like the moment, just one small part of the story at a specific point. Philosophers argue about whether we should think of these pages in terms of their order or the way we experience them while reading. Whether we would think about a moment in terms of its context to the whole or as our experience of the flow of it. Okay. On the first view, one could be a presentist and committed to a tenseless system of logic as the best way to capture temporal propositions. A tenseless proposition, oh man, this stuff's like going way over my head. Oh, well, ChatGPT will help. On the first view, one could be a presentist and committed to a tenseless system of logic as the best way to capture temporal propositions. So what's tenseless again? That's the whole. Tenseless is the whole, tensed is the experience. Okay. On the first view, one could be a presentist and committed to a whole system of logic. A tenseless system of logic is the best way to capture temporal propositions. A tenseless proposition is a proposition that describes how things are or could be at a moment without reference to the past, present, or future. An example of a tenseless proposition is that Sam sits on Arthur's seat at 2 p.m. on December 12, 2018. What is this? Inactivity? I got this thing for inactivity. I guess because I haven't been getting guests or something. This is literally the dumbest live so far. I mean, I'm struggling to understand this paper, so I feel you, man. An example of tenseless proposition is Sam sits on Arthur's seat at 2 p.m. on December 12th. On this view, tenseless propositions can be ordered by primitive earlier than and later than relations. On this approach, one takes a nearly maximal proposition or a moment to be a tenseless description of how things are or could be, but this tenseless proposition lacks a description of the earlier than or later than relations between itself and other moments. This is because moments are not essentially ordered. The ordering of moments into earlier than relations is a contingent matter of fact. On this view, a maximal proposition or a world is a complete description of tenseless propositions that are ordered by earlier than relations. Oh my God. This assumes, of course, that such a world contains Moments of time. A possible world without time has no need for tenseless propositions because such a world has no temporal reality to describe. In this case, as well as other possible worlds with this maximal proposition be best captured by modal logic. I'm so fucking lost. Maybe ChatGPT, my only hope. Okay, so I use please and thank you when I'm talking to ChatGPT. I'm polite to robots. That's weird. We should be rude to robots. Because one day they will take over the world and put us in the Matrix. If we deconstruct your hand and your capacity to... what? ChatGPT theism. I think ChatGPT is good to help if you're reading something that you don't understand. It's good. It's good for that. How many people did we block yesterday? Four people. Did we? What did you do? Well, I don't want to know. Okay, this passage dives into two philosophical concepts, presentism and tenseless logic. It's trying to explain how time can be understood using these ideas, but the language is dense. Here's a simplified explanation. It is dense. Presentism. This is the idea that only the present moment exists. The past, future are not real in the same way present is. Right, we know this. Okay, tenseless propositions. These are statements that describe events without using words like past, present, or future. Okay. So Sam sits on Arthur's seat at 2 p.m. on December 12th, 2018. The sentence doesn't say whether this event is happening now, in the past, or in the future. It just states the facts. These propositions can be arranged in a sequence earlier or later, but the sequence itself isn't built into the proposition. 3 moments of their ordering. A moment is like a snapshot of how things are at a particular time. The passage says that these moments aren't naturally ordered. They don't automatically have a before or after. We impose that order earlier or later based on our understanding of time. Moments aren't naturally ordered. I'm so confused. Aren't they? They don't automatically have a before. Because what, like the moment Sam sees. I'm so confused. Maximal proposition worlds. A world is a complete description of everything that exists, including all moments in their order. For example, if we describe everything that happened in history up until now and how moments connect to each other, that's a maximal proposition. If there's no time in a possible world, in a world where nothing changes, there's no need for tenseless propositions because there's no time to describe. This passage explains how time and events can be described in ways that don't rely on concepts like past, present, or future. Instead, events are treated like facts, and we impose order based on how we perceive them. A world ties all these events together into a complete story, but not all worlds include time. Some might be timeless. Think of our photo album. Each photo is like a moment. It shows how things are at a particular time. The album itself is like a world. It contains all the photos and organizes them in specific order, earlier or later. But the photos themselves don't need to be in order to exist. They're just snapshots of reality. The world needs the order, but the photo doesn't need. I'm so fucking confused. Oh, God. On the second view, one could be a presentist and committed to a tense system of logic as the best way to capture temporal propositions. So, what's the tense? That's the flow of time, right? Tenseless is time without flow, the whole thing. Tense is the flow of time. A tense proposition is one that describes how things are or could be at a moment with reference to the past, present, or future. An example of a tense proposition is Sam is sitting on Arthur's seat. The is in this proposition refers to the present of what's happening now. On this view, tense propositions can be ordered by primitive earlier than relations, but this view includes other primitive notes such as tensed operators like it was the case and it will be the case. On this approach, one takes a nearly maximal proposition or a moment to be a tense description of how things are. It could be, but this tense proposition lacks a descriptive of earlier than relations between itself and other moments. This view, like the previous one, can say that the ordering of moments into earlier than relations is a contingent matter of fact. On this view, a maximal proposition or a world is a complete description of tensed propositions that are ordered by earlier than relations of tensed operators. Good God. This paper is going to be a struggle. uh This is all stupid talk. I'm reading a paper by Ryan T. Mullins about time and God. And I'm stupid, not Ryan Mullins. Mars, you're doing all this reading just for me to defeat you with the argument? True. True. That's a great comment. Mars, you're doing all this reading just for me to defeat you with the argument. Dude, I don't know how to defeat the nuh-uh. I was a debate monger when I was a Christian too. This is sports team-esque behavior. It does nothing. What do you mean? It's a game. I'm just playing a game, man. Hey, Julie. When superposition interacts with realization, it causes blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't know if I want to be honest. I'm not looking to be like an expert on time or anything. I just kind of wanted to like read about time and God because people bring up time in arguments. So I just want to be slightly better prepared if people start talking about time and God in an argument, so I can know what I'm talking about. But this is. I don't know if I really even want to. Like, I hate learning about time, so I don't know if I want to do this. Um. So ChatGPT is saying here, okay, so one, tensed propositions. These are statements that explicitly include time references like past, present, or future. Sam is sitting on Arthur's seat. The word is indicate that this event is happening now in the present. Other examples of this phrases would be like, it was the case that past, or it was the case that, or it will be the case that future. Moments of time in tensed logic. A moment, a specific point in time, is described using tensed language. For instance, like past, that's what they mean by tensed, past, present tense. Okay. For instance, instead of saying Sam sits at 2 p.m., a tenseless proposition, a tense description might say Sam is sitting, Sam was, Sam will. Okay. However, these moments themselves don't inherently include relationships like earlier than or later than. We add that order based on observation or reasoning. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Maximal propositional worlds. A world in this context is a full, detailed description of all events, including their tensed relationships. For example, a world might include statements like, it was the case that Sam sat at 2 p.m. It will be the case that Sam stands at 3 p.m. Contingency of time's ordering. Just like the previous view, tenseless logic, the idea that moments occur in a specific sequence, events happening before another, one event happening before another, is not automatic. It's something we determine based on the facts of the situation. Just like in the previous view, tenseless logic, the idea that moments occur in a specific sequence is not automatic. It's something we determine. So we order propositions, he's saying, whether we use tensed or tenseless logic. Imagine a diary when someone records what you do every day. Each entry says what is happening now and what happened earlier and what will happen later. Each diary represents a moment of time described using tensed language. Example, like today I ate breakfast. The full diary represents the world, the complete account of all the moments and how they relate to one another. Okay. Like when you're writing a diary, like today I did blah, 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 and then later I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. So that's tensed, but then it's ordered in the diary because each page happens in like a succession, an order. Okay. And that's like the world is the diary and the pages are the tensed propositions. Comparison to the first view, tenseless logic. So tenseless logic uses neutral descriptions of events without directly mentioning past, present, or future. Tense logic focus on the time when things happen. Both can describe moments and worlds, but approach time differently. Tense logic emphasizes the feel of time passing, while tenseless logic views time as a sequence of facts. Okay, I think I understand it now. Good lord, this is some dense reading though. Bro has a Lex Friedman voice. He sounds incredibly bored. Okay, so the creationist option. Man, this is a long paper too. Oof. I am man. Maybe I should take a break. Honestly, maybe I should take a break. It's like too early in the morning to wrap my mind around just the concept of like time. I was hoping some more people would debate, but I think maybe my arguments are getting too good. All right, I'm gonna take off. See you guys later.